All right. Hi everyone. So now I'm in Kaohsiung in southern Taiwan for a conference. So new hotel room, clean place, reasonably priced. Probably not reasonably priced though, but I mean, hey, I'm not picking up the tab for this one. So for me, quite reasonably priced. And look at the view from my 21st floor hotel room. Isn't this something, right? This is pretty awesome. I gotta tell you. So cool views. Another cool thing. Every day on these conferences often starts off with a keynote speech, a talk from a well-known researcher within the field, or some other prominent person that has something relevant to say about the field of research. So yesterday, that keynote was delivered by none other than the Prime Minister of Taiwan, who actually used to be a well-renowned epidemiologist before going into politics. So that was pretty cool. But you're not here to look at the views. You're not here to hear me talking about environmental epidemiology. You are here for some reason, unbeknownst to me, to listen to my random thoughts and reflection with regards to my reread of Midnight Tides, Book 5 of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Now, as I mentioned in my last video, Midnight Tides was my favorite book of the series after the first time around. So, did it hold up? We'll see. Anyway, there are of course two major settings in this one. The first being the Eder settlement, or town, city. I have a hard time visualizing really, but it is refreshing with a cold winter setting after spending 2 books in the deserts of the 7 cities. And I kind of imagine the building style and the culture as a whole as kind of inspired by Vikings. I may be completely wrong there, but I kind of imagine the place as a slightly larger version of the first area of the map you get to explore if you play Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So anyway, nice change of scenery. I like how the plot begins in pretty unremarkable fashion with a breaking of a treaty, of an agreement over seal hunting rights. You have your obvious comments then on colonialism, and then you have this upcoming diplomatic summit as a backdrop, and it feels a lot like a lot more like an episode of Star Trek than your average fantasy plot. As for characters, I still have a hard time connecting with the Sengars as characters, though. They're very stiff and formal. They put all this emphasis on tradition and decorum, so it's hard to get under their grey skin. And I hadn't realized until this reread that Erickson repeatedly hints at the Eder before we actually get to meet them. So that's a random thought here. The stuff about the Weibel, that weird spirit demon thingy that flies off with Udinas. Still have no idea what went on there and how that came to be. Right. So the second setting then, the best part of this book though, it has to be T-Hole and Bug. That's an unsurprising and kind of a boring answer, really. I have nothing to add. There hasn't been said about them already. Of course, knowing Bug's true identity makes a reread so much more enjoyable. I love the part where that Smith out on the crippled god's island. I forgot his name. Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Well, anyway, you know who I mean. And he is out there and he prays to Mael. And then in the next scene, we see how T-Hole watches Bug climb up from the canal, soaking wet, and the only explanation he gives is, I thought I heard someone calling my name, and that is, on a reread, just amazing. And along with the end of Beak's storyline in Reaper's Scale, I don't think there's any scene that I read as many times as the bug reveal scene when he talks to an injured T-Hall. It's just brilliant. So yeah, and Leatheress as a setting, you of course you have people literally drowning under the weight of their debts. And the fact that the difference between slavery and indebtedness is really just about semantics. It's great stuff. Everything dealing with the holes in the tiles also make so much more sense this time around. Another short random thought, Kettle. Isn't she just the most adorable little serial killer you have ever met? And I haven't even mentioned Shurk and Oblala. I mentioned them. They're great, and I can't wait to Reaper's Scale so I can pick up the storyline. I'm 80% through with my reread of the Bone Hunters currently, so it won't be that long of a wait. Another random thought here: bone tornadoes. I'm just saying, bone tornadoes. There, I said it. Bone tornadoes. But from a rereading perspective, then, this is where we finally get to see the crippled god making all his big moves, and of course this happens a few years before the rest of the story. So the big moves have already happened, though we don't know it when we begin the series. But here we see him put the pieces into place. I mentioned that earlier in some video that I didn't get the expected sense of, the board is set, the pieces are moving, but here, yeah, this is setup. This is the setup. Yeah, so the crippled god is making his big moves, and even though Hanan Mosag is, I think he's planning on double cross him, or at least that's how I interpret the situation, or at least trying to twist the situation to his own advantage. So I don't think that Mosag would ever be happy with just being an agentless servant in the crippled god's big plan. I wonder also if the crippled god realizes this, and I suspect that maybe he did, and then he started grooming poor old Rulad, who is, well, if not the perfect fit for a pawn of the crippled god, so at least close enough for it to work, and boy did it work. So he controls Rulad, thereby controlling the Eater, and in the end thereby controlling Leatheress. So the crippled god is well and proper set up for the rest of the series, even though we're in the middle of the series. But of course this takes place before the events of the first book. There is one character in this book whose character and behavior hasn't been rehabilitated by the fandom in the same manner as Felasin or Karsaur or Kamansod, and think they're due for a closer analysis. But I need to, and I want to do a video on that, but I need to finish this read through to follow this character along, and I've forgotten a lot about where their story's going. But yeah, that's something I plan to revisit in the future. So if you don't have anything else to do, you may want to take a guess at which character I'm hinting at here. So what did I think about the book overall the second time around? Well, immediately after my reread, I kind of sided at the folks at the 10 Very Big podcast, because I re-listened to their discussions as well as my read-along has progressed. And they argued that this book really doesn't add that much to the overall plot. So it fell a bit short, they thought. And I kind of agreed initially, but as I sat on it, and it's been a while now, some time has gone by because I hit a reading slump after finishing this one. So it's been a few months. But as time has gone by, it really just popped back up again to the top tier of my own Malazan rankings. It's an immensely entertaining story. No idea if it will remain on top as number one, as my very favorite. There's some fierce competition going on. But yeah, it will remain up there for sure. On a reread, the themes and plots are not as confusing as the other books. That was true for a first read as well, I would say. I think this could probably be read as a standalone book, and I do think that you should read the main series in publication order the first time around. But I think this could work as an introduction to the series. If for some reason you don't want to go into Gardens of the Moon, or the fandom scares you away from it, saying it's too complicated. Actually, on my next reread, I'm planning to start the main series at Midnight Tides. And yes, I am planning the next reread, even though, I'm only 5.5 books through this reread. But for the next one, I would like to start with Midnight Tides and go into Night of Knives and the Karsa section of House of Chains, and then into Gardens of the Moon and Memories of Ice. So that way I get the 3 Seven Cities books in one stretch, and you get the transition with Duiker saying that I'm going to tell you about the Chain of Dogs, and then you transition into Deadhouse Gates. But that's going to be a while. That's probably not in a few years' time, I would say. I need to get through this reread first, and also I have a mule to kill. So, see ya.